In this video, we'll cover the Angular front end. So we'll create the Angular front end components to retrieve data from the Spring Boot REST APIs. So we've already done the work on the back end of developing the Spring Boot and exposing those APIs. Now we're focusing here on the front end of building out our Angular front end code. Alrighty, so let's look at our development process. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll create our Angular project. Then we'll create Angular components for showing the product list. Next, we'll develop the TypeScript class for our product. Then we'll create an Angular service to call the REST APIs. And then we'll update our Angular component to subscribe to data from the Angular service. And then we'll display the data in an HTML page. And finally, we'll add cross-origin support to our Spring Boot application. So the first step is really simple. We'll create a new project using the Angular CLI. We'll use the ng new Angular e-commerce. And then step 2 of creating the Angular component for the product list, we make use of ng generate component, and we say components/product list. In step 3, we'll develop our TypeScript class for our product. So this is just a very basic TypeScript class that's going to hold the data for us. So we make use of this ng generate class common/product. And they'll create a very basic class that's just a shell, and then we'll add in these properties for our given product. And these are the same properties that are exposed by the REST API. In step 4, we'll create an Angular service to call the REST APIs. So an Angular service is code developed in TypeScript. The service is a helper class that provides the desired functionality, and it's part of your Angular application, and it runs in the web browser client side. So don't let the word service fool you here. It's really just a reusable class or a helper class that runs as part of our Angular application, and it runs in the web browser on the client side. And here's a diagram to kind of show you the interaction here. So on the back end, we have our Spring Boot back end exposing those REST APIs. Now we're doing the front end code in our Angular project. And so our Angular project will have all the GUI components, but it'll also have service or multiple services. So these services, again, just reusable classes or helper classes that run in the web browser on the client side. And we create these services using TypeScript code. Angular provides a REST client, and this client is called the HTTP client. We need to add support for this in our application module. So in the imports section of our application module, we need to add a reference here for the HTTP client module. Alrighty, so now here's the code for our service. So a couple of things here for our service. Up top, our service is going to be injected into our components. Angular has built-in support for a dependency injection framework. So we simply annotate this class with @injectable provided in root. So this basically says, hey, here's a class and you can inject it as a dependency into another component or class. So the provided in root means that this class can be injected globally. So it's not specific to a given module. You can use it anywhere within this given Angular application. So here's our class product service. We have the base URL. For right now, we simply hard-coded localhost 8080 API products. I'll show you how to put it in the config files later. And now moving to our constructor, our class has a dependency on the HTTP client. So we can inject this client by making use of the constructor here. We give the private reference, and then Angular will handle injecting this given HTTP client into our given service. And so then we have getProductList. This method will return an observable of product array. And so inside of the coding here, we have return this.http client.get response, this.base URL. We're going to make use of a pipe, and we're going to map our data to a response. And we say response._embedded.products. So that's the JSON that's coming back from that Spring Data REST API. Remember that _embedded. So at the bottom here, we have this interface called getResponse. It'll basically take that _embedded and then take those products inside of embedded and then map those to a given product. So this piece of code here basically handles grabbing that JSON data, unwrapping it, pulling it apart, and then placing that data into an array of products. Now at this point, this is just an observable. We don't execute the code until we actually have a listener or a subscriber on the code, and we'll cover that on the next slide.